Half an hour. This is a short intensive talk about short intensive courses for first certificate. Okay, there are two things going on in this talk. Firstly, as it says in the programme, this is a bit of product promotion. Let's not hide it. This is a new book coming out straight to first, which is a 60 to 65 hour course which you can extend to 90 or reduce to 40. And that's on the Macmillan stand. There's another thing going on though, is in the last couple of years I've been going into a state secondary school in Madrid where I live and helping them with preparation for first certificate. And I don't get very much time with them. I get, 2 lessons a week, but I get half the class on one lesson, half the class the other. So I see them between January and May when they take the exam, so roughly between 10-15 hours. And in those 10-15 hours, what I'm not going to do is do lots of exam practice. What I want to do is teach them rather than test them. The exam practice can come at the end. So what I'm also going to be giving you, or what I'm going to be giving you as well, is my email is there. The email will come up on the PowerPoint, and I'll be referring to material that I've devised for those kids, but it works with adults as well. They're 16-year-old, but it works with adults. It's material that I can send you if you're interested in receiving it. Okay, as we go through, you'll see what that material is, and it's material that I've devised for this course. And with these kids, I had to really, with 10 to 15 hours, what do you do? Where do you start? Particularly with vocabulary and grammar, which is the first area I'm going to look at in the context of use of English. Okay, so what choices did I make about what to work on in the classroom and hopefully improve their level towards preparation for the exam? The first thing I'm going to start with is word formation, because word formation is something that you can see clear results with if you teach a systematic syllabus. The Cambridge Handbook used to say affixes should be taught in a systematic way. It doesn't say it there now, I don't know why, but it's very, very useful advice to not just do word formation exercises willy-nilly, but to have some syllabus which works towards improving their use of affixation. So the first one, this is obviously from the book, and there's a section on nouns. I'll tell you what the sections are in a minute, but this one here, importantly, there's your word formation exercise and there's your input. So it's teaching before testing, which is another very important thing. Even though it's an intensive course, not just test, but teach before you do the testing. So the input here is on nouns. If I just focus that up a little bit, there's an example, okay? I mean, there's some sentences from a listening, from a reading, use the affixes there, the suffixes to form the nouns and check your answers. Standard stuff, yeah? And then over here, use the same suffixes with these pairs of words. So, for example, cycle and science would be, well, in Spain where I'm working, some students might be tempted to write a scientific instead of a scientist, yeah? But because it's next to the word cycle, they know it's not cyclific, so you're giving them a prop to help them. Again, supporting students, not just throwing them in it and seeing how they do. Okay, so using their existing knowledge. And then here a short text with the actual nouns formed with the affixes working backwards to get them to say from which word those nouns were formed, and then using those affixes to work with these pairs of words here. And in that very short space of time, we're dealing with all those noun suffixes, which all appear in some guise in the first exam. Okay, so we need to work quickly, and that's how we're looking at it there. The other sections that need looking at, well, nouns, 2 sections, because you have those affixes there, but then you have the other group of nouns where there's internal changes, like choose to choice, or lose to loss, sell to sale, that kind of thing, which doesn't fit into this category, and which are often tested at first as well. Adjectives, obviously, adverbs, and verbs I put in brackets because verbs, the classic kind of suffixes for verbs like if I, like class, classify, or eyes, terror, terrorise, revolutionise, are more often tested at advanced levels than at first. It's not often you get verbs that require to be formed for this exercise. You do get the enables, ensure, or widen, lengthen, that kind of thing, so they need looking at. But if we're looking at which categories to go for, nouns, adjectives, adverbs, and then the negative prefixes and suffixes. Okay? But there's something else that needs dealing with, which is context. And I've noticed this particularly with these 15 and 16-year-olds, is they get the word formation and they put the first word that they can form from that. So there's some heads nodding, yeah, you know the kind of thing. And most of my teaching was with adults, so it's kind of a revelation. These kids just do the first thing that comes into their head and write the words. So here's a little exercise for you. This is what's happening here is you have the word, this is a text, okay, but I've isolated sentences. The well-equipped kitchen would be completed without one. What should they have written? Incomplete, right? So they knew the word completed, they didn't know the word incomplete, and many wrote completed, okay? I'll show you some more sentences from the same text. You tell me what word should have gone there, and also, can you work out what the text is about, okay? So instead of an electrician, they weren't using the clues. In fact, many of them didn't know what a plumber was, which is fair enough. Electrician, another one. Success. This is an interesting one, yeah, because it's a kind of grammatical, they're not looking at the grammatical context, not just the meaning, but the grammar is very important as well. Succeed. Oh, successful, I know that one. They didn't stop to think. Next one is inventor. Yeah, is invented. They thought, oh, passive. I don't know why, but they did that. They missed. In fact, the name was on the next line. That was interesting. They missed the name because it was on the next line. Do you know what we're talking about here yet? Anyone know what the microwave? Dishwasher, microwave. Here's another one. It's the microwave. Yeah. And this is an interesting one. What should they have written here? Its ability, yeah. What's interesting here is they've mistaken the its for the it apostrophe s, so they've used that wrong. And they've put if we're talking about a microwave, they have the title. You didn't have the title. They know what the text is about. It's about a microwave. They didn't even read the title to help them with the context. So they were writing unable to heat and cook food, for goodness sake. They knew they had to change the word. Okay? And I'm finding this with these kids with open, close, and word formation in particular, about not looking at. So we need to do lots of work. So here's back to the book, and there's an exercise. This is an earlier unit from the nouns. This is adjective affixes, and this one has words highlighted to guide them to the correct answer. We hope. Yeah. So for example, this one: we enjoyed the film, but the seats in the cinema were really uncomfortable. What did they write? Comfortable, yeah. They're still doing it. You can try and lead them to the right answer, but still they fall back on the first word they come to. And the next one, there were too many, well, obviously careless. What did they write? Careful, yeah. What's a careful mistake? They all laugh, yeah. They realise. But we just done so much work on context during this short period to get them ready for the exam. Okay. Next thing, transformations. I wanted to do some work on grammar with them, and I wanted to do it to kill two birds with one stone and do it in the context of transformations. Okay, what I'm going to be doing here is not from this book, but it's some material that I can send you if you're interested. Okay, this is what I've been doing. Firstly, present perfect. I haven't done this. This is the kind of typical grammar rules for present perfect you get in B2 course books and before and after as well. Okay, but that doesn't really help them with the present perfect in transformations. These are some typical transformations on the present. But just have a look at those. You don't have to answer them, but just look and see what's being required. There are only so many ways you can test the present perfect past simple in transformations, and this represents the main types. There's the answers. The last time I spoke to, so they've gone from present perfect to past simple. Yeah? And then the first time I eat, no, the first time I've eaten, and so on. So there are a limited number of ways that you can test certain grammar areas in transformations. So on my intensive course, what I'm going to do is go straight for the jugular and try and work out what they are so that we lead them to kind of very focused, a focused look at the certain grammar areas. So here, isn't it? This is actually from Ready for First, but this one here match the one on the left to two on the right. So I haven't done this before, matches with which letters on the right? C, I've never done this, and E. It's the first time I've done this. So you can see the red, I haven't done this before, matches I've never done this. It's the first time I've done this. There's the kind of transformation you get. And the other one, I haven't done this for 5 years. It's 5 years since I last did this. Yeah. In Spanish students talking about using the language or exploiting the language of your speakers. My students, I know my speakers will be tempted to write, it's 5 years since I don't do this. Yeah, so I know where they're going to make those mistakes. That's what, why we're doing this. And the other one's there as well. So do this before you get them to do the transformations, and they're much more successful. And this is what I give them. There's my email address at the top, rnorris@telefonica.net. It's up here as well if you want it. And there on the sheet, we've got that exercise at the top. And then you can see the first four are the ones that I showed before. So they do this exercise before they do this one. And when you monitor them, if you do it in class, you can go around and say, no, look at 1B or look at 2C and use that as your model. They teach themselves. And I've done this. I mean, this is a little pack you can get when I'll send it to you. Also with comparisons, with make, let, allow, need, must, with conditionals, and also with phrasal verbs, which we'll come on to a bit later. So not only grammar, but lexis. Again, with my short course, there's a limited amount of time. Those are the areas I've gone for. I've also got this on the emailable, and it's the same transformations. There's the transformation, and then on the other side is the answer. Photocopy on card, put them back to back, some good old Tommy Teffel, and you end up with a series of cards like this, and they do these cards, they look at the transformation, can they remember in pairs, turn it over, the answer's on the back. And we build these up. There are 5 here. Last year I had more time. This time I've only done 3 this year. But it's time well spent because they need that revision. Again, with an intensive course, it doesn't mean to say you can't do revision. You need to do revision. Better to go for a shorter amount of material and revise that material than try and throw loads of material at them and none of it gets learnt or assimilated. Okay? Phrasal verbs. I'll just have a sip of water. Phrasal verbs. I went to a talk once where somebody said phrasal verbs was overdone at first certificate. And I disagree. Phrasal verbs can be useful, are tested in multiple choice close. They can be tested in open close. They can be tested in transformations. They are even in, well, it'd be great if they use them in their writing. If they use them in their listening, that's fantastic. In their speaking, that would be even better. If we get to use them naturally. And I have here, this is from the practice book, Cambridge practice book. I'll just read this. This is the multiple matching task. Yeah, and in 3 of the questions there's a phrasal verb. Which teenager has to put up with people teasing them? Put up with and teasing, you know, pretty tough for some first certificate students. Which teenager puts up with a general disadvantage of having a job? And which teenager, was not told off for a mistake they made? So there's 3 in the questions, and then in the text there's my father talked me into it, and that's a tested item. Yeah, even in the reading, phrasal verbs are coming into it. So I do think there's a need to have a look at least at some phrasal verbs, and as we go through this, my feelings on it will become clear. This is a typical kind of exercise you get in so many course books. Put the word in the gap. Well, how do I do that? How do I know what goes? It's testing. I don't know what word. If I knew what word goes in the gap, I wouldn't need to do the exercise. What's the point? As a revision exercise, fine. But as a presentation exercise, not a lot of use. It's testing. And there are so many of these. Even now, we're still getting lots and lots of exercises where students are not supported in the course, but just do the exercise, see how you get on. Here's another one. Well, for me, that's horrific. That's terrible. I think that's an awful thing to put in a course book, and it's in a course book which came out a couple of years ago. Work in pairs. Think of as many phrasal verbs with put as you can. This is a recipe for chaos. Just roll or put away, up, in, out, off, down, over. Yeah, just write anything. Check them in the dictionary. The Macmillan English Dictionary for put has 4 pages of double column. An advanced dictionary. I still use them. You'll laugh. The advanced, the print version. Yeah, and here they are. Put in has 8 different meanings. Put up 9. Put down 10. Put on 17 different meanings. Now, if you do this in the class, how are you going to check? How are you going to work with this? I put on. Oh, there's 17 different meanings. What do I do with that? Which one is mine? It's just going to take so long if you've got dictionaries to use. This kind of exercise should not go into course books. It's lazy. If you're an editor, if there are editors here, don't let that sort of thing happen. It's just testing, and it's just a recipe for chaos. Teachers don't need chaos in the classroom. If you're an editor, don't put it in. If you're a teacher, do not try this with your students. Yeah? If you're an experienced teacher, which probably most of you are, fine. But you've got your new teacher, you know how to deal with this in your own way. But you'd probably have to do some work on it. Your inexperienced teacher goes, oh, well, it's in the book, I'll do that. What happens? Well, I can only imagine. So, some support is needed. Again, here, there's nothing revolutionary about this. This is from the book again, but here's some phrasal verbs which were in a text. Find them in the context. From the context, match them to the meanings. Support. Here's a listening text for part 3. And you might just make out some words which are highlighted in bold. Here's an example of that. Don't read it all, but come down to the bottom there. But I never really took to it, to the Scouts, like he had. No one I particularly liked or got on with. I stuck with it for a while. From the context, talk in pairs, work out the meanings of those phrasal verbs. Yeah, words in context, like any other vocabulary. Took to, got on with. This is coming up here. This is a later unit, an exercise there, which is this one. Put the verb in the box in the correct form, but you've got to use the same verb for both gaps. So maybe, again, like the word formation, if you don't know one of them, you might know the other. And if we look at one, we've got some revision. Again, this is a later unit, revision. We used to get on well. I know that's get, because I saw that in Unit 5. And then that's also going to be the same verb. So I'm teaching myself. Number 3, I took to my sister's boyfriend immediately. Took to was in an earlier unit. There it is again. And I can use that. I may not know this, but that one will teach me that one. Yeah. So some support. Again, they need help with that kind of thing. Now, there is another thing. With the students that I've got at the moment, there's not much time, as I've said. So I'm going to go, what I've done is isolated a certain number of phrasal verbs that I think that will be useful to them. Before I come on to that, can you tell me what the next word is for each of these sentences? Up. Yeah, the answer doesn't come up, actually. It's pretty obvious. The party started at A, but ever didn't turn up. Okay. The factory offered him a job, but he turned it down. I've just joined a theatre group. We're putting on. Yeah, what are we putting on? Can you guess? A play. What's the play called?
Phrasal verbs.
Phrasal verbs. It's Hamlet anyway, right? Okay. 4. The church was, it's maybe not so obvious. The church was flooded, so they had to put... Off is the answer. Yeah, put off what? The wedding it is. Yeah, it could be those things. Yeah, I'll tell you how this is used in a minute. Somebody recently said they had to put on Wellington boots. That's another possibility. I looked like my father, but my brother takes after. Yeah. Rob always has his can with him. He took phrasal verb. Not so obvious. Took up photography. Okay. I was tidying up my bedroom when I came. It's a typical, isn't it? I came across whatever I came across. And the last one, can you guess the whole of the sentence? We need to come up with a solution, and that's exactly it. Come up with is one of the kind of tougher phrasal verbs that is tested at first certificate. You might think, oh, it's a bit advanced, but actually it does appear often in first certificate. Well, so what? You can do that. What I want to do is for my students to be able to do that. So what they get, and this is in your little pack if you want it, is this. There's the thing you've just been looking at. Notice how I've put turn together, put, take, come, looking, organise them there. But they get the continuation. And there are sufficient lexical clues in there for them to be able to match them up. So we talked about the church, wedding, they go together. It must be that one. Yeah, they're matching up and in so doing, recreating phrasal verbs. Then they use the sentences to work out the meanings. There's the meanings, they just put the phrasal verb here. And that's it. Or is it? It could just be just another exercise. But what I do with this is this. Get them to learn them, study them, cover up the bottom, and can they remember the continuation? And they can have little competitions with each other. How much of the sentence can they remember? Just the phrase, just the particle that comes after, or the whole of it? 1 point for the particle, 2 points for the whole thing. It becomes a revision aid as well. You can also do this. Cover up the meanings. And then there's a phrasal verb, what's the meaning? You can do that, you can do this, you can do anything you want with it. It becomes not just a teaching vehicle, it also becomes a revision aid as well. And in the pack, there's also this, which is phrasal verbs. These are based on real examples of transformations using phrasal verbs from the past with Cambridge, based on them. And sorry, what I didn't say was this is called top 30 phrasal verbs. I've highlighted 30. With the current class I've only been able to do 20, which is fine. Yeah, any more than 30, far too much. Maybe 30, depends on your class, depends on your students. And you also may think some are missing, in which case change one and put another one in. For example, set off is not there. I haven't got that there. And I realised afterwards, oh, well, that's a useful one. It couldn't fit it in. You have to have a limit. Phrasal verbs here with, in the context of transformations. Can you do this one? The company that Sally now runs was set up by. So it's not just the phrasal verb, there's passive going on as well. And that's so often with transformations, it's not just one thing, there are two things happening. And all those transformations have more than one thing going on. Okay, and then there's a revision test which I do with them at the end as well, which is in the pack. Okay, 8 minutes, right. Writing. A little story about this group. Last year I had the group I had, I took them on in January, and then in February the teachers there at the school said that everyone was going to take a mock exam. And I said, I haven't prepared them. You're throwing them right in at the deep end. And they were. But it was interesting because what I got were these kids who'd never come into contact with first certificate, suddenly having to jump through the hoops of the first exam and see how they got on. So here's an example. This is the question that they had to do. All right? And as so often, there are two things happening there. What should I do to make friends at school? And how could I meet people near where I live? So two things, maybe 2 paragraphs, maybe an introduction, maybe a final comments. Yeah, that's what we'd like them to do. And this is what Madalena did. This is a real example from last year. This is hers. You don't have to read it. You can just look at it and see that something is not quite right there. And I can read out, if you can't, some of you may be able to read it, but I'll read it. I've read your letter and I think I could help you. That's nice. Making new friends, gerund, that's good. Is easy, that's nice. The most important thing, don't be afraid. I'm sure your new friends are impatient to know more about you. Looking forward to, yeah? We hadn't got that far yet. You are one of the nicest persons in the world. Now, as an introduction, it's not bad, yeah? It's pretty good. But actually, she's already answered the first point, how to make friends. Don't be afraid, that's her advice, and that's it. And then the next thing, if you live far away from your new friends, and she interprets that as the same friends, meet with them in the park as fast as you get new friendships with them, the best. All right? And then she's thought, well, I've done it. That's it. I've answered the question. What do I do now? Your situation is not so bad. I also have some questions, and then there's a list of questions which are irrelevant to the question. Yeah? She didn't know what to do. She didn't know how to approach first certificate answers. But it's all right. Why not? Yeah? But it wouldn't do very well. So the advice, the first thing, what I'm getting to is what is it that I'm focusing on in writing? And the most important thing is paragraphing, is structure. Because once you get the structure right, everything else can fall into place. Yeah? But if you don't work on structure, then it can be the same kind of rambling piece of writing with no direction. So here, back to the book, and this is from a writing bank. And actually what I do, I don't go do the writing lessons from the units, I just use the writing bank. And there's a question, which you can't read, there's a model, there's some useful language, and there's a task for each of the task types. Standard stuff, yeah? But the important thing was for me to focus her attention on the paragraphing and the way it was put together. A couple of other things as well, and I'll show you what the result was in a minute. You can't read that, but it says use of linking words. It's common to all the writing. There's got to be focus on linking words, so that forms part of my intensive course as well. Language for giving advice. Language for giving advice, so useful for many of the task types, for letters, for article even sometimes, for review, for recommendations, for report. So here in the useful language box, giving advice comes up a lot. So which language area do I focus on in my short course? Giving advice. It will be useful for many of the writing types, using linking words, but importantly, paragraphing. And really what I've said to them is 4 paragraphs works for many of the task types. They need short rules of thumb, and 4 paragraphs works very well for many of those writing types we mentioned. So here's the next question. This was 2 weeks later. Madalena. There was the question. Christina and I are going into town next Saturday. Buy a printer for my computer, casual clothes, but with the proviso, good quality but not too expensive. You can't come shopping with us, but what do you suggest we should go? Okay, so there we've got a couple of points. We've got the printer, we've got the casual clothes, we've got some language of advice, suggestions, and we've also got some chance for some vocabulary for good quality but not too expensive. And this is what she did. And there it is, the paragraphing, yeah? Now, if you were to read that, but I mean, you know, because we've got short time, 3 minutes to go, you would see that she's made a real effort to put some useful language in there. She's structured it as we wanted it to. If I were you, if the price doesn't convince you, if you want some casual clothes, make sure you have a good look round in. Okay, that's the input that we've put in there, and she was able to produce that. Okay, so that was the main focus for writing. It's the same this year. In fact, it's a bit sad, but I've brought my group's homework to mark this week. There are 23 copies here. In fact, 24. I've got to give them back on Monday. But, well, I can't show you this, but each of these 23 has 3 or 4 lovely paragraphs, yeah? It's taken time. This is the 3rd piece of writing they've done, and finally they're writing paragraphs, except, bless her, Alejandra. Alejandra has got 6, 7 paragraphs, yeah? I haven't read it yet, but I know more or less what, although there is some nice language there, you know, personally, well, not surprisingly, that's good, yeah? So we'll see what, I haven't read it yet. But, you know, these things don't happen overnight, it takes time, even with the best of plans. So, there's a report, it's the same structure, a range of language for giving advice, that says. And there it is down in the useful language for report. Review, use of linking words and phrases, the paragraphing as well. giving a recommendation. And for stories, if you're doing first for schools, then, well, maybe 3 paragraphs, background, development, outcome. There it is. You can do 3 paragraphs if you want, 4 if you want to split that middle one. But the essential thing is 3, 4, but not 1 minute. Right, okay. Not just the rambling, unstructured piece of writing. Reading and listening, there is no time, I've got to finish. But basically the reading and listening is talking about the importance of paraphrasing. Let me just look at this. Which person mentions having to gain consent to start on a project? That's the question. Gain consent. This is from the First for Schools handbook. What language do you think will be in the reading? It's not going to say, I had to gain consent. What's it going to say? I had to get permission. It's pretty predictable, isn't it? We could sit here looking at each other for hours and try and get some other, but that's it. I had to get permission from the local council. So any work you do on paraphrasing, I could show you more examples from reading and listening, is very, very useful. My advice for reading and listening is paraphrasing and distractors, looking at scripts. But I have to finish there. And if you want to look at the book, it's on the Macmillan stand. Thank you very much.